Right. Welcome to Association Chat. This is your online discussion for the association community where we warm ourselves by the virtual fire with topics of the day, welcoming thought leaders and trailblazers alike to join up in this online home for the community. I'm the host of Association Chat, Kiki L'Italien, and maybe you've noticed that the work we do and the way that we're doing it is a little different in 2020. For many of us, we are adapting fairly well to many, many changes that we're facing in our workplaces. We're adding ring lights to our home offices. We've got Zoom breakout sessions all figured out. And so we might be feeling pretty confident in our ability to adapt and grow. But some of the work that we do, especially when it comes to these multi-step processes and the projects that we have where there are many, many different moving pieces, sometimes those projects haven't adapted quite as easily. So the question today, will the work we do and the way we do it return to what it was? And here's another question. If not, what can we do to make things better? So to help answer that question, our guest today is Troy Pfeffer. I'm going to bring Troy on up. Hi, Troy.
Hello, Kiki. Hello, everyone.
It's so great to see you. Your focus is to further the growth and development of organizations and those around you through better engagement of people. That's a great thing. I wish my bio had that in it.
Yeah. Aspirational, isn't it? Yes.
It is. It's aspirational and it's true. And that's why you're here today, because we're going to talk a little bit about how things have changed and what that means for the future of work and the way that we do it. So, first of all, let me ask you, Troy, how has the idea of work changed in 2020?
Yeah, Kiki, that's a great question. And really that is true. The idea, and you put it so well, the idea of work itself is changing. Let me give you a story. Way back, my father, for 35 years, he got up at the same time every day, Monday through Friday, got in his car, drove somewhere, did his work, came home. He did that for 35 years. So for the longest time, work was often defined as a place that I go. I'm going to work. It's where I go. Now, over the years, that started to change from being a place of where I go to what I do, right? It used to be, where do you work? Then it became, oh, what do you do? Well, I'm an accountant. I'm an attorney. That's what I do. So we started seeing that shift, if you will. Now, the very progressive organizations are taking that shift even further. They're going from what I do to how I do it. And it sounds subtle, but it's very fundamental. So going from what I do to how I do it is a dramatic shift in basically any type of work that a person does, from the very basic to the very complex. Oh, Kiki, I can't hear you.
You know, isn't that just 2020? You're on mute.
You're on mute.
You're on mute.
I should, yeah.
It's not even Zoom, and it's still the same. Okay. So, but it is true that a lot of people are talking about these changes and identifying the areas in which it's not as easy it's not smooth a transition in doing the work that they need to do. The how they do it is the part where people are getting hung up. And I think that, what a lot of people are excited to see is that, well, life can continue, work can continue, we can get it done. But how well we do that and how efficient we are, but also, how successfully we're able to do some of those projects and some of those things. That's where there's just been, I think, a lot of people who are sort of there's been pushback and a lot of complaints. And actually, I do have another guest, which, Troy, I'm so excited. You know this person as well.
Yes, I do.
Paul Meyer.
Hey, hey, y'all.
Yes,
Good
and
to be here.
so I wanted to bring Paul up because, Paul is co-CEO of Tecker International, where I'm senior consultant. He's a friend and colleague, but a lot of the work that we do is in strategic planning. And, that can involve a lot of in-depth conversations and work that is not something that's done in an hour. So he's kind of the perfect person to talk to you about this sort of thing too. And so, Paul, we've been talking about this process, switching from doing our work in person to doing it virtually throughout this entire year. What have you experienced, and what have you learned from watching how some of this work has changed?
Yeah, so as we all know, it's been such an interesting transition, because when we do strategy work with associations every week, and we had lots of strategy sessions scheduled in March, May, April, June, and every time that it was ready to kind of 2 weeks before the event, we'd say, well, we'd really like to have the event, but we can't. So we would reschedule it to the virtual space, or we'd cancel it because there was this idea that, well, we can't really do strategy in virtual space. It has to be done face to face. I mean, it's one of those tasks that we do as associations that requires sort of face to face interaction. While that's true, you don't want to stop doing strategy just because you can't be face to face. So all of a sudden, those groups that canceled those meetings in May, June timeframe, they said, okay, we've got to reschedule the meetings in the fall and we have to reschedule those meetings virtually because we just can't do it face to face, but we have to keep the work moving. While those sessions have been very fruitful, I have to admit that the product that's been created in those sessions, those virtual strategic planning sessions, is really good. So the product's not bad, but the experience lacks a ton. Okay. So, you get out of that experience and you say, what did we just do? Do we really have the ownership of the outcome that's necessary to really make strategy happen? Have we really created the appropriate dialogue and discussion around the information to own it? So the real question of ownership is still, I think, an unanswered question in strategy when we're doing it virtually. Product's good, but the experience not so great. Ownership not as good as well. So therefore, this idea of transitioning to a better way of doing it virtually so that the experience matches the product is really what we're looking for in strategy going forward. So I'm excited about, using additional tools, seeing the tools change that would allow us to have that sort of similar experience or even better experience or different experience while we're creating strategy together, so that not only the product is good, but the experience is good as well.
Hey, Troy, does this kind of reflect what you've been hearing in this, well, not just in the association industry, but in just the people who've been trying to do the work that they do worldwide?
Yeah, it's a great question, and yes and no, if you will, right? And Paul brings up a great point: the idea of strategy, strategic planning, strategy development, right? So again, if we look at it through the lens of work, strategy is a great example. Historically, strategy or strategic planning was done by a very small group of people, usually at the very highest level, once a year. And it was simply, how are we going to make our numbers next year? And the more progressive companies might look out of a year or 2 or 3 beyond that. But traditionally, that was strategic planning, strategy development. Well, again, the concept of work changing, it went from small group of people once a year to small group of people throughout the year. So that was a positive step. Strategic planning went from an event to a process over time. But I would contend that, again, when you look at that third shift of how work is changing, I would contend that another step is necessary. And it's the idea of engaging more people. No longer should it just be the responsibility of a very small group of people at the very top. The organization itself can have inputs, provide feedback, data, experiences organizationally into that strategic planning process. So you go from few people once a year, few people multiple times a year, to many people multiple times a year. So I think that's the shift that needs to occur. And for that to happen, like Paul mentioned, new tools, new processes are necessary.
All right. Oh, let me add Paul back.
Can I please? All right. Well,
No, you're out of here. You're done.
That's all you need me for, right? It's just show up.
Thank you, Paul. Good seeing you.
Yeah. So just to build on what you said, because I think it really goes. There are 2 points that I'd like to make. One is a point that is important for associations, and another point that you made that I don't disagree with, but I just want to build on. And that is, the first point is, associations by their very nature were consensus building enterprises. That's what we do. And as we all know, associations are jointly owned by all of the members. So really, when you think about that, if you own your own company, you can make any strategic decisions you want for that company because you're the owner. But when you've got an association that has joint ownership, everybody owns it, okay? And now we put a board of directors in place in order to represent the ownership. But isn't it great that in strategy going forward, we have the opportunity to really expand the consensus building process beyond that small group of people that you were talking about that are representing the owners. So you've got a great opportunity when you go into the virtual space to be able to interact more with the complete ownership body in order to get what they want and get what they need. Now, the challenge with that is that sometimes the average member of an association doesn't even know what they want. So sometimes the association has to go beyond what the members know. So when we think about the engagement of the group in strategy, it's more than just the members. Potentially you have the opportunity to bring in the members' customers, for example, others within the industry, because then we're working together to create strategy that not only benefits the individual members, but it benefits the industry or profession that they represent. Now, one thing that is important, though, however, in strategy, especially with associations, is the ownership piece. And so therefore, even though we want to include a larger group of people in the process of planning and thinking strategically, we have to be careful that we don't lose the opportunity for the owner, the board, for example, to be the final arbitrator on that strategy. In other words, it's not just a consensus building process where we say, members, what do you want? And that's what we deliver to them. Because obviously, we've got to think about the resource implications to what we're doing. So it's that ability to kind of bring in a larger group of people so that when we make those final decisions by the leadership body, we're making decisions based on the good of the whole.
Yes.
Well, I think that this is such an important part because a lot of what we have seen come together quite nicely this year has revolved around things where it is something that is pulling people together to feel good or to build community, or it's something where it's more straightforward, where it is or not straightforward, but more like pushing out learning, education. And there are a lot of really great things that I've seen that have been happening. If that is the mode of the type of work that you're trying to accomplish, or the type of communication that you're trying to have, or the outcome that you're trying to accomplish, right? But when it comes to this process that you're describing, Paul, that we experience with like strategic planning, that has many different types of moving pieces with different audiences. And the outcome of that, it's not quite as I don't want to say that everything that I just mentioned is simple, but it's not quite as simple as simply bringing people together on like Zoom and just making sure that they're all in the same space. It never has been that simple. But when you add this virtual component, it definitely makes things more complicated. Troy, we were
So
talking.
let me just come back to that, because I think, Troy, you said something that's really important, and that is, the most successful strategy projects or initiatives are projects where an organization views it as strategic thinking, not planning. And that's kind of what you were talking about, where it's a process of thinking and planning strategically than the creation of a plan. And if we see it as a process, then we believe that a process, because of the opportunity now in virtual space that we don't have to get everybody face to face, it allows for more contribution to that process because we're using virtual space for it.
Yeah, I'm pausing so Troy has a chance to respond to that.
It's a great point, Paul. But Kiki, I want to finish you were about to ask a question to me, and I think it's an important one. Do you recall the question?
I was actually going toward this. There's a lot of theory about what would constitute quality experiences online or learning. But there's a lot of theory that's floating out there about what works for folks and having these engagements online.
Yeah,
but not a lot of practical help.
Exactly, not a lot. And here's why. What works for you, Kiki, may not work for Paul, but may work for me. Well, what works for Paul may not work for you, but works. So everybody's different. Trying to shoehorn everybody into a Zoom call will not work, right? And another good example of that is doing a simple survey of everybody will not work either. So we've got these individual disconnected elements, if you will. Some people love to do synchronous type activity like the three of us are doing right now. Others say, listen, I do my best work when I'm alone. It's quiet. I don't have anybody I'm staring at. I can do my work asynchronously, right? So the best solution is the one that works for everybody. And that's what Paul mentioned at the beginning, and that's where technology can come in. Technology recognizes that everybody is different, right? Everybody is different. Some people are frightened just to show up on a Zoom call. It's they don't like to be, looked at, if you will, let alone participate and engage. So that's why, Kiki, you bring up a great point. That's why people are constantly talking about it, because everybody thinks there's one solution that will work for everyone, and there just isn't.
Yeah. So what do we do? How do we solve it?
Again, and Paul brought it's through technology. Technology exists where, and you and I, Kiki, you and I and Paul have laughed over this. Right now we're conducting what many will call a webinar. Right?
Right.
We've been laughing,
but it's not.
It's not. That's right. We've been laughing. Maybe it's an engage-inar, right? So you figure out how to engage people exactly like they want to be engaged, right? Synchronously, asynchronously, group, individual, it doesn't matter. So the technology is emerging that is enabling the better engagement of people.
Right.
Yeah. And from a strategy perspective, the more we engage people in the process, the greater likelihood of ownership. So again, this is where it gets into this ownership piece because what I'm noticing, again, with just the kind of low end interaction we have with Zoom, is that you get done with the call, you go on to your next thing. There's no follow up. You forget about what you did, especially in strategy. You move on to doing your real work that you're supposed to be doing, and you don't have that same sense of ownership, which you'd have if there was opportunities to interact between meetings, if there's opportunities to interact with the material after the meeting. So it feels more like a process of strategic thinking than creation of a plan.
Very true. I mean, that's a great point, Paul. I've always said that if you want somebody to act on something, involve them in the
Yeah,
creation of what you want them to act on.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the more investment of time and energy and effort is going to have, you're going to get the buy-in from people, or at least you're more likely to get the buy-in from the people who are involved when they're actually engaging and participating in that process. But easier said than done, right? So I imagine a lot of people are listening to it and they're saying, yeah, I buy into this 100%, but and it's the buts, right? It's
Yeah.
all of
Yeah.
the reasons why it will never work. We tried breakout rooms, but it didn't work. We tried collaborative whiteboards, but it didn't work. And so there are a lot of people who are trying things and testing, and it's understandable that in a year when people are having to make adjustments and try new tech and try uh, all kinds of different things, to do everything from order groceries to be seen by a doctor to figure out how to set up their strategic planning, that there would be a little bit of fatigue in testing new things out. That said, you can't just give up, right? You can't, we can't just stop and say, okay, we've tried everything and that's it. The only answer is to wait until we're all back in the same room again. And Anne says, thank you. I get so frustrated with the use of engagement without talking about what it actually means.
Very true.
Yes.
So I'm glad she brought that out. Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. So what should we do? I mean, Paul, I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, and I kind of know the answer, right? We know the punchline is that we have some ideas about what we can advise people on, but I want to investigate a little bit more about, some of the steps that we're taking to provide a solution, because the answer can't be that everyone shows up at the same place at the same time and does their work right there, right? So what are you finding, and this could go to either of you, Troy or Paul, what are you finding that for sure doesn't work?
Oh, wow. That's kind of a long list. Doesn't work.
I would agree.
For those people who are watching right now or listening later, or watching later, please understand that I have read blog posts and multiple lists from Paul throughout the year 2020 that is just really explaining all of the things that do not work, right? So no matter how long his list is right now on the spot, I promise you it's actually much longer.
So Troy, really though, I'm looking to you for solutions. Like I am just looking, I'm desperate for solutions. But what obviously doesn't work is all the things that are in my mind, presenter focused. So for example, there's nothing worse than me feeling like when I'm doing strategy on a Zoom call with a group that all they want me there for is to entertain them or to provide them with some information that they say, oh, that looks great. Thank you very much. So, that's like the worst case scenario. Now, I will say that that's getting much better, as people get more and more comfortable with the virtual space, not just comfortable with Zoom, but comfortable in the virtual space. That's where it's really exciting to think about what's next. So, what's most uncomfortable in my mind, what's not working, is when people don't engage with each other and don't engage with the material. And we can all say engaging with each other is kind of working, but what I don't see working well is engaging with the content. So,
Mhm.
which is very different than engaging with the individuals. And what I interpret is engaging with the content. And Troy, you can help me out here because this is your thing. But when I interpret engaging with the content is being able to interact with the content, make changes to the content, provide not just editorial changes, but to be able to provide substantive comments about what you perceive as the right way to outline the elements of good strategy. So it's the engagement in the content which I think is kind of missing, and that's where I think we need help.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Paul, because I think for too long, in your example here about engaging around the content, I think for too long, the focus was on, okay, the content. The focus was, we have to finish whatever it is this content is. And they, in that example, organizations, associations, companies, groups lowered the importance of the engagement itself. Really, if you think about it, what's more important than the content is the engagement, are the people involved. And if you put the right amount of focus on the people, the content will follow. The content quality will just be elevated because you focused not on the end result, but the result of getting to the end. So I think that's why, and Ann made a great point about, people talk about engagement. Well, what does it mean? Well, that's what it means. I mean, there it is. Yeah. Because it's always been secondary, right? Engagement has always been secondary, right? Hey, we're going to meet by video, or we're going to talk about this content, or we got this task we have to finish, right? The focus is on the thing rather than the people engaged together that end up with the thing.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point, because we see, what's happened during this time is we've gotten more and more comfortable, obviously, with virtual, and it is an enormous opportunity for associations to be able to engage not only their members but engage others in the process of strategy, in the process of decision making. We've been there's as you may know, Troy, there's these traditional sort of House of Delegates, where there are large bodies of people that come together in associations, and there's usually like 200 or 250 of them, and they all get in a room, and they're designed to make decisions for the organization. But it's a very traditional, old-fashioned way of making decisions. And now with technology, we have the ability to say, okay, we don't need those anymore, because we can engage a much broader group of people in a environment that actually creates, by interacting together virtually, can actually create a better product. So it is kind of exciting to see how sort of virtual tools will be used in the future, because at the very heart of what we are as associations, we're people. We're people that engage together because we believe in what we're doing together. And so go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Kiki.
So
build off of that.
I was going to say, there's so much to that. The one thing that whenever I hear technology being brought up, technology is amazing. Technology is allowing us to have this conversation right now. Technology is allowing us to actually do a lot of things. My daughter's continuing to take dance classes and take all of her schooling online. It's amazing. But one thing over the years in working in marketing and watching the tech space in the association industry, technology can do a lot, but it's not the answer by itself, right? There has to be this understanding of the way that we use these tools that we're given, because I can give you a pencil and paper, but I can't make you, a better writer. And so part of the answer is the technology. Part of the answer is understanding how to use it. And I think that that's what's really fascinating to me right now, is that as we're all, all of us are going through this grand experiment of becoming better at using some of these tools, it's also that thinking and that understanding about how we learn and how we engage and how we are able to work together. It goes back to that science of working together, that we have to marry to the technology. Because otherwise, I feel like, our clients and the people that we work with, associations out there, they buy into a promise that's very difficult it would be very difficult to deliver on unless it has both of those pieces, right?
Yeah, and Kiki, great point. The technology itself should in essence be an enabler. It should get out of the way, right? It should get out of the way and enable people to do whatever type of engagement that they feel comfortable with. So the technology should not be the focus. Never should be. In fact, the best technology is easy. It's simple, right? It's, oh, I get that. That makes sense. Okay, I'm going to start engaging and participating, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I think that that's one of the things that I've enjoyed from our discussions as we've been meeting for the past couple of months, maybe longer, I'm not sure. But we've been meeting and having these wonderful discussions that talks about the ins and outs of how people engage, when they want to meet together, when they don't, and the different types of tasks that are involved that can be done separately or should be done separately, should be done together. And it's those ongoing discussions that give me hope, because
Yeah.
I look at where we were when we started in 2020 and where we are now, and I think, wow, it truly is the future of work, and the way that we do and the way that we accomplish it. Not only has it changed, is it changing, but I think it's going to change so much, so dramatically in the near future as we continue to adapt.
Yeah, and yeah, I think we can, I don't know if thank is the proper word, but we can attribute that to the pandemic that we've been going through. It forced everyone's hand to do something quickly, right? To try to figure things out quickly. So that was the trigger, if you will, and it really sped up the process that had started to emerge beforehand. This just made it happen faster.
Yeah, Daniel says it's hard when the technologies are difficult or require a lot of effort in order to understand and interact with. So, to
Absolutely.
your point, you were talking, Troy, earlier about it's best when the technology enables people, empowers people to do the work that they need to do, and gets out of the way. That it's
Yeah.
not the thing that's like, you know, jumping in and causing more problems. If you're more concerned about how you're able to accomplish something using the system versus the thing you're trying, the problem you're trying to solve,
Yeah.
then it can pull you out of that moment and truly get in the way. So great point, Daniel.
Agreed. I agree.
All
Yeah,
right.
and just to build on that, the first kind of thought that came into my mind, I don't know, am I talking too much?
No, you're not.
Okay.
No. And in fact, I do have wonderful technology. I can kick you off if I want.
Okay, I was gonna say, you just shut me up or you just turned me off.
I'll just do that. No.
Exactly right.
Look at
That,
Or
that, that
better yet,
doesn't.
you know me, I'll just interrupt you and I'll start talking.
Yeah,
Right.
that's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. So it is an interesting question around because I know that many associations, they just like businesses, they don't know when to jump into new technology. We're all sort of we wait. We don't want to be early adopters. We want to be sort of slow adopters. And associations, by their sort of setup, they don't have a lot of resources to invest in new technologies.
Mhm.
However, I think what's interesting when I think about associations and technology, what I see happening, because well, let me just take a step back from that. Not only do associations have that challenge with figuring out when to jump in, but so do their members.
Mhm.
It's the same thing that's happening in their members' world as well. And wouldn't it be great that the association views themselves as like a learning lab where the association can take some risks about using new technology for interaction, etc., and share with their members the advantages and disadvantages of that technology so that their members can learn from that, knowing that the association potentially could be taking some level of risk because the odds may not be as high in terms of failure as a member who may own a company or be involved in some responsibility would have. So I see associations, or I challenge associations to really think about being potentially early adopters, not because of the fact that they want to be innovative as much as they are trying things out that would help their members out. And they can say to their members, I use this technology and here's how it worked, or here's how it didn't work, and here's what I recommend for you to use. So
Yeah.
changing the role that associations play in technology is really important.
Yes, Paul, great point, because I myself am a member of a couple different associations. And if I think of the associations in general, I look to them for guidance on how I can become better, right? And it not only is it the function itself, which is the foundation for whatever association is out there, but the way it happens, in this case, technology. So yeah, I love the idea of an association being an innovation lab, a skunk works, whatever you want to call it, where they're trying new things ultimately for the benefit of their members.
Yeah,
Right.
so you have a Zoom call, and and the reason why you're having that Zoom call as an association is to communicate some content. But then after you're done communicating your content, you kind of have a chat with the group about what worked for the Zoom call that you just had and what didn't. And what did you try that's different, so that the members of the organization can not only get the content that you're delivering on the Zoom call, but they're also learning how to use Zoom more effectively through their involvement with the association.
And Paul, and it not only is it a neat thing to do, I would contend that it's necessary. Because go to any association and ask them for a percentage. What percent of your members are actively engaged? And I would contend it's probably a very low percent.
Right.
So the question then becomes, hey, how can we engage more of our members? Not only for the benefit of the association, but ultimately for the benefit of both the member and the association.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, when I think back about the various board meetings and meetings I've been in over the years, I mean, before we had to worry about keeping someone's attention and getting them engaged virtually when they weren't sitting at the same table, we still had to worry about getting their attention and engaging them when they were at the table, when we were in the same room.
Yeah.
And so now it's like we can't even go by and tap on the desk next to them or try to get their attention. So what is it that we can do? And I think this approach, this new way of thinking about how we're able to accomplish the work that we need to do, it's kind of fascinating because sometimes when you have new types of barriers that spring up, it allows you to find new ways to solve problems that maybe you've always had. And so some of the conversations that we've been having lately talking about this project, and folks, I know that I'm teasing a project that we're working on, and I'll go ahead, and if you're watching right now and you want to know a little bit more about it, this little bit.ly link that I just put up at the bottom of the screen. Now, if you're listening to this later, you can look in the show notes and you'll have the link right there too. But it's better-together-chat. It's a bit.ly link, bit.ly, and then you have your backslash and better-together-chat. Go there, check it out, and see what this is all about, because we're working on something where we're going to invite you to walk through an example of this is not just, by the way, this is not just a sample project. You're actually going to be doing work too. We're going to be working on something collaboratively together. But throughout the week of January 25th, this starts January 22nd. And it is a collaboration between Association Chat, Howspace, and Tecker International. We're all coming together.
Very exciting.
Yes, very exciting.
It's not conceptual. We're actually doing something. We're doing something.
We'll see if it works.
Doing it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you're going to engage in how to solve big problems, but we're going to do this and actually go through the process together, where you can see this marriage between how are you able to collaborate asynchronously, synchronously, and still get your work accomplished using technology in a new way, in a way that maybe you haven't before. So definitely check out that link, so that I'm not continuing to tease you for any longer, because I know I keep talking about this project. But to this point, the reason that we're talking about all of this today is because there are big problems that need to be solved, that we need to work on. All of these different associations in the association industry represent every industry, every vertical you can think of out there. So we're all trying to solve all of these different problems. How we can best do that when hurdles like distance and time and a pandemic get in the way, That's what we're talking about here. And even after COVID, even after the vaccine, we're still going to need to be able to do this work, right?
Yeah,
So,
Kiki, I'm glad you brought that up, this idea of after the vaccine, right?
right.
I think too many people think or hope that life will go back to normal, right? Back to normal. And in a way, it will, right? The vaccine will allow things to open up. But work itself, I think the genie's out of the bottle. The genie is out of the bottle, and some people are loving this new style. Some aren't. Some aren't, and that's okay. The point being, options. There's options available, right? Like I mentioned at the very beginning, some people love to engage differently. Well, guess what? Some people love to work differently. Some people don't like to go to an office each and every day. Some people don't like to stay home every day. So what the pandemic has shown, this new work environment, is it can be done. What groups will have to do, whether it's an association, a business, organization, whatever, they're going to have to figure out the mix that's right for them, right? And one is not best for everybody. It's all individual. It's all different.
Yeah. One is not best for everybody. It's all individual. That's absolutely true. And I think that that's where that frustration comes from people who are just looking for the answer. They just want the answer. They want the recipe. They want the technology that they can buy that will just solve all their problems. But it's like it's a combination. It's understanding what it is that you're trying to accomplish, the methods you can use to accomplish it, and then having the right technology there that will allow you to do that work that you need to do.
Exactly. I mean, imagine even within an association, imagine if every single individual was happy with their work setup, their work environment, right? Some are in an office, some are at home, some are hybrid, some are going back. Imagine if every single individual's desire for their work was met. Imagine the engagement then you would get from that entire group of people. So really that's the key. That's where technology will be that great enabler to do something that, quite frankly, hasn't existed up until today.
Right. Right. Well, so, go ahead, Paul.
Can I jump in just for a second?
Yes.
We know the research indicates all the research that I've looked at, the research we've done, is that member engagement equals membership retention.
Yeah.
So if you want to retain your members, you've got to engage them. We also know that engagement is in the eyes of the person who's engaging, not in yours. So, when I've said, in the past, engagement equals retention, then the first thing an association will think of is, oh, we need to get more people on our committees, or, oh, we need to get more people to come to our meeting. Well, we know that that's not how, as you were saying, Troy, some people either have the time to engage or want to engage. So, the real challenge for associations is really to recognize that engagement is important, because at the foundation of what we do, we're a community of people or companies first. So we're about a community. So therefore, if that's what we are, then we've got to engage the community in order for it to be a beneficial experience for those that join our organization. Yeah. And we need to also recognize that the way we think they want to be engaged may not be the way they want to engage or prefer to engage. So, the more we have, now that's where, I think that in the future, this whole, concept of hybrid, which everybody talks about, and it's kind of a concept that everybody throws around and we use it differently for different reasons. But the idea of having multiple ways to engage, and when we think about not just virtual versus face-to-face, but multiple ways to engage that incorporate the two in ways that are truly hybrid. So it's not just, okay, you can engage over here virtually. We have our online education over here. We have our face-to-face education over here. We have the board coming together here to do strategic planning, but then they're engaging over here virtually. It's this combination of all doing it together. Now, and I believe that for associations, we are really good. We've been doing it for a long time, and we're experts at face-to-face engagement. That's what we've been doing. Our whole basis of how we do our work has been around this idea of people coming together face to face. However, we're not so good, at least up until the last 6 months, we haven't been so good about the virtual component. So I believe that when we develop more opportunities and more options for virtual engagement is when I think it's going to come together for us. It's not about, I can't wait to get back to face. It's about, yes, we want to get back to face, but really more than that, I believe we need to develop this virtual component to be far more robust than it has been in the past.
Yeah, Paul, great point. For those that are listening, watching, if you take away one thing, just understand this: engagement is highly personal, right? And it's not as simple. It's not a two-dimensional realm. It's not, is it virtual? Is it in person, right? It's not that. Is it written? Is it digital? It's not that. It's everything. Quite frankly, some people like to engage anonymously.
Right.
Okay. How can you engage anonymously, right? So there's another variable present. But again, if you think about it being highly personal, there are so many variables involved, right? So many variables that you have to try to figure out. But that's okay. Technology is emerging that enables full engagement regardless of what variables are out there.
Yes. Well, and that's the thing, when we talk about the future of work, I know for the longest time there were murmurs, and I think that there still are some that are out there that I'm hearing, but some discussion about things going back to the way that they used to be when we're all back together, right? But in the meantime, there are changes that are shifting that forever. I think obviously we're going to be coming back together. We're drawn to have meetings in person. But the thing is that a lot of companies have chosen to, do away with their larger headquarters, and they are now trying this ongoing remote personnel sort of situation. My husband is part of a company that is doing just that, where they have downsize their offices, but with the idea that the workforce, it turns out they can trust their workforce to work in different places, and it's turning out just fine. And so, and I've heard of associations that are doing that too. I think that because of that, identifying solutions and ways that we're able to collaborate on and work together, ways that we can improve upon the ways that we do this, that it's going to be so important for us to continue to work on that, to continue to grow and develop in that way. But Paul, what you said earlier is so true. For the longest time, we've been really good in the association industry about getting together in person and doing our work in person, even while we've had these technologies available to us to do things in a different way. What happens when, through this grand reset that we've had in 2020, everyone's been a part of the same lab, where they've been able to become more acquainted with using tools virtually and being able to jump online when they didn't know how to operate their camera or didn't have this stuff set up before? Now that we've all become and gone through, the ultimate demo, right? We've all gone through the ultimate demo this year with interacting virtually. Now, what's our excuse? I think we'll be able to do so much more even when we are coming back together, because we have so many more people who are able to use these tools.
Yeah.
I'll comment on that, and it's a great point, Kiki, because if you think of any association, traditionally in person, you mentioned in person, right? The big annual conference, that was what everybody worked toward, what everybody focused on. That was where a lot of activity happened. Well, guess what? I don't know of any, there might be some small ones, but how many associations got 100% of their members to attend that conference?
Right.
Probably very few. So Kiki, you're right. Once we get through this phase, there will be in-person big conferences again. But the really progressive associations won't go back to what they used to do. They'll still have those in-person conferences, right? But between the conferences, they'll leverage the technology that they've been exposed to during this grand reset, like you put it, to further engage their membership and elevate the association as a whole.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. Let me rephrase. I think that I'll qualify by that.
Yeah.
COVID is horrible.
Yeah, right.
It's terrible. I think that the opportunity to do things with more people in new ways and in a way that is more thoughtful and inclusive is fantastic. I think that it's excellent that we have these ways to do it. Daniel says, seems like while we've started to better understand virtual events, we are a long ways off from understanding a virtual engagement or collaboration, especially in the hybrid space. And that's true. We still have learning to do. That's part of why we want everyone to be a part of this project too, is so that we can all go through and learn and work together. This is something that, I know that Tecker International and Association Chat and Howspace, that we're all very, very, very excited to do this, because we know that this is something that is going to open a lot of eyes, and it's going to be a good experience for people. And we're going to continue to learn, right? I'm not selling you a magic carpet ride. What I'm saying is that this is a chance for us to learn together and to grow and do better things. So, did you like that, Paul, the magic carpet ride?
I did. I was very impressed with that. We're all on a magic carpet ride together. Yeah, and hopefully we won't fall off, right?
I know.
Yeah, it's just a whole new world. Right?
It is. That's very true.
Yes. Reed says the multiple choice for tools and platform make it even more challenging. Yeah. That is so true. If you think about how are you supposed to narrow it down? Many, many conversations that I've had with people in the association chat community have been around when they were trying to solve the problem of the annual conference, right? And they're having to go and demo a million different types of platforms and solutions. Just trying to manage that process was very difficult, because obviously when there's such a need, you can imagine that every product out there was trying to pivot so that they could then become the answer to that need. And so the market has exploded as far as old offerings that have new features, existing offerings, and then new offerings. And so it's been very difficult to, especially when you're looking at like conferences and stuff like that, to figure out what the answer is. But then you have other things that are over here, like Zoom, and then you have things that enable work to be done where maybe it hasn't gotten as much press, at least in the association space, just because that hasn't been where they didn't have the immediate thing that they needed to talk to a million people about all at once. And so it's kind of, I think that what this has done this time is it's illuminated a lot of different problems that need to be solved. And as a result of it, we're going to have so many more ways to improve our processes, improve our engagement, improve our meetings. We'll have more options available if we could just make it through all the demos, Reed.
Yeah. All the demos. And I'm glad Reed brought that up. And Kiki, you're spot on. The emergence of technology over the past 9 months has been amazing. I mean, there's some interesting products coming out. But again, it's important that people don't get caught up in the technology itself, right?
Right.
It's about the people. It should never be about the technology. Yes, it's not the technology enables the people. Don't reverse that.
Yes, always, always, always. This is so important. And I'm Troy, I mean, we're all singing in the same choir. We're singing from the same hymnal, it's like it's so true. You don't want any of this, any of the tech, the theory to get in the way of actually what's going to help you to the concepts to help you. It doesn't need to be more complicated than actually figuring out the best way to do the work that you need to do.
And Keith, I'm glad you've been teasing the folks with this project that we have coming up in January. Listen, the more people we can engage in this project, the better. Please, by all means, we want everybody to register because, like Paul mentioned earlier, sort of this innovation lab. We're trying something new here. We're trying something new and unique. We want everybody and share the word, spread the word. Sign up en masse, right?
It is going to be fantastic.
It is going to be fantastic. The more people, and again, it's an experiment of exactly what we've been talking about today. Let's engage people. Let's engage people around this very important topic so that the outcome is highly actionable. It's actionable by those involved and for those that can share with others as well.
Yes. And, I have to say that we've had such an excellent time talking about putting this project together. And, I think that the most exciting part for me is knowing that this is work that we should be doing in the association industry. I mean, Paul and I know Glenn and just all of the Tecker International folks care so much about the association. We live in this industry, right? And we know the work that needs to be done there. And so the ability to come together and work on this together as a community is really something that we're excited about. I got distracted because I see Anne says the project sounds exciting.
Good. Anne, spread the word.
And Daniel says eyes have been on events, not collaboration, not consensus. And Anne says, I'm definitely checking it out. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, do yourselves a favor. Do check it out.
Not only check it out, but join. Participate.
Well, right.
Yeah, we want you to join.
That is true. Troy is absolutely correct. We want you to join. And, I have to say that this is something that it is absolutely not a webinar. Okay. It's not. Do not expect to just show up 5 minutes before and sit back and drink your coffee and say, okay, I'm just going to watch how this unfolds. No. So this is going to be an experience. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah, and I'm going to put a lot of pressure on this because I think what we're doing in January has the opportunity to really change the way we interact and engage our members in work. Mm-hmm. And what we're trying to do, for those of you that are trying to figure out what this experiment is all about, it's the experiment is all about, and we, because of some of the specific work we've done with House of Delegates, and we tend to want associations to be democratic processes for decision making. But yet we still give that to a very small group of people representing the whole. Well, these opportunities, like we're going to do in January, give the opportunity for a whole lot of people to engage in the decision making of the organization in a way that allows the board then to take this information and make the final decisions and own those decisions, but have the ability to get far more people engaged in decision making than we ever have in the past. That's what we're all about, is let's engage our full membership in decision making rather than using smaller bodies within our organization as representatives of the whole.
Yes.
Well said. Well
Very
said.
well said, Paul.
Well, we're coming
excited.
At the end of our time. And so what I want to do before we wrap up our conversation today, and I have to just ask you, Troy, will you come back on? Paul is on the hook. He's ongoing on the hook to come on Association Chat. Troy, though, can I go ahead and put you on the spot and ask you to come back and visit with us again?
I would love to. I would love. This is something I'm passionate about, engaging people. And listen, when you talk about engaging people, there's no better entity to engage people than associations. Yeah. So yeah, count me in, Kiki. I expect to.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. I really, really appreciate it. And Troy, I have to say, and I just kicked Paul off, and it was totally on purpose, Paul.
That's okay. I have to get. I just like threw myself into this, so you know.
No, and I threw you up on the screen, so that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Paul, for being a part of it
No.
today.
Yeah, no problem.
Kiki, I want to come back just for the fun of it, right?
I know. Troy, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Absolutely.
I cannot wait to continue our discussions, to continue working on this project together. And listen, if people want to reach out to you, connect with you, I have your LinkedIn profile here at the bottom of the screen. But is there any other way that you would like for them to reach out to you where they can find out more?
LinkedIn would be the best way.
All right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kiki.
All right. Well, you heard it here. What did you think? What did you think, okay, about our topic today, about what you heard? What did you think about the project? There's so much to learn. And if you got anything out of our conversation today that inspires you to learn more, to take part in the project, if you have questions, then please reach out. Please continue to ask questions every day. As Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. I hope you have a great rest of the week, everyone.